Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. These are the squashes that I'm growing up a framework made out of bean sticks. And a month or two ago, they were a little bit slow to get going, but now they have really gotten their stride. And you can see the fruits are forming down the bottom. They're getting larger and orange, and up here, these are all getting to a good size. This is Uchiki Kuri. So one of the jobs now is to take young fruits like this one and start pinching them off, because they're taking energy from the plant. I'm also going to cut some of the leaves back, because you need full sunlight on the growing fruits so they ripen, and also some ventilation. Because if you have masses of foliage, and if you're growing them vertically, they don't get any sun, they don't get any air, there is a slight risk of mold. So just take off any of the bigger outward-facing leaves. Basically, if you can see the fruit, then the sunlight will get to them. Coming up on today's programme, Adam visits Bolton House Garden in the Cotswolds and is stunned by the late summer colour in its borders. Francis goes to North London to an allotment which has no fruit or veg in sight. And I will be doing some fresh planting around the young hornbeam that I put in the ground last spring. The grass borders have a selection of grasses ranging from steepers to Discampsias, Molinias, and they're all growing, but with different results. It's been here for about 5 or 6 years, and I've learnt something during that period, which is, if we have a wet summer, they flop like mad and need supporting. The one grass that reliably holds its form and can take any amount of weather is Miscanthus. And it is magnificent. For example, this giant here is Miscanthus sachariflorus. This one here is Miscanthus strictus, and you can see it's got these horizontal markings. So in the middle of a big bed like this, you can have a dramatic grass with really good flowers in some cases, or fabulous foliage in others, that will hold its own, and doesn't matter what the soil is like, whether it's full glaring sun or it's in a bit of shade, or whether it is a hot baking summer or rather a wet one. And I have got a gap in the middle, so I'm going to plant some more Miscanthus that I know will look stunning. I've got two types of Miscanthus here, one of which is an old friend and one which I've never grown before. The old friend is Miscanthus malpartus. And I think if you're only ever going to grow one, this is the one you should grow, and certainly the first one you should try, because it's an absolutely stunning plant. I'm planting a group of 3 of them because I want an impressive stand. And the reason why malpartus is so good is that it has silver-veined leaves topped with fabulous plum-coloured flowers that fade to a glorious silver. And not all grasses flower. A lot of them need more heat than our average summer can supply. But Miscanthus malpartus will flower as long as it gets a little bit of sunshine. When planting grasses, bear in mind they are not plants that grow at all in cold months. It is now getting late in the season. If you want to plant grasses, get them in over the next couple of weeks if you possibly can. Let's firm that in. This is a Miscanthus called Cosmopolitan, and I haven't grown it before. And I've chosen it because it has this longitudinal stripe down each leaf. And the whole point about grasses is to do with texture and form and even sound as they move in the wind. So to have a dramatic foliage like this, sets up a contrast with some of the finer grasses, and you need that variety. Now, although they are bigger than Malpartus at the moment, Malpartus will grow to 2 metres, and this will be more like 1.5 metres. That's the first one in. Now, obviously, grasses are based upon the pleasure of the subtlety of interplaying greens, lines, and textures. But when Adam went to Morton-in-Marsh, he found colour, and not just any old colour, dramatic, even exotic colour, and lots of it.
We gardeners do like a yap, don't we? Especially if we find something that we think's a little bit different. I had a mate say, Frosty, you have got to go and visit this garden. Not only is the design special, but the planting and the work that's gone into it will blow your mind. This is Broughton House, a 2.5-acre garden near Morton-in-Marsh. At first glance, it looks good. But get a bit closer to those borders and there is something really special going on. The amount of tender perennials that just work through and bring it alive. Amazing. Three gardeners create and maintain this amazing space, headed by Jackie Ray. I've had a little walk around this garden. It's like food for the soul. It's incredible.
It's great fun. We enjoy it.
But you've been at, what, 18 years?
Yes. Well, this is my 18th year, so 17 and a half.
And head gardener for 16 months?
Yes.
Using tender shrubs and half-hardy perennials has been the tradition throughout Jackie's time here, bringing an extra blast of colour and form. Because they become your jewels, don't they? They sort of more or less guarantee you colour this time of year.
Yes, it keeps on going and getting better and better. And the end of September, beginning of October, it's fantastic, until the frosts, really.
Wow. In all, the team uses around 160 different types of tender plants here, like this lantana, and lots of aeoniums. All but 1 or 2 are grown on site.
Well, I did do 2,000 cuttings.
2,000 cuttings?
Yes.
And presumably that's just the smaller stuff, whereas some of the bigger stuff gets lifted and taken
Yes,
in?
yes. We always do cuttings of the Butylons and the Cestrums, so we've got young stock coming on because we don't keep the really big plants.
They lift and overwinter whatever they can carry in up to 40-litre pots. And then in spring, spend a month replanting everything out, including the new plants they've created from cuttings. When you get to the end of May, it must be manic here, isn't it?
Yes, it is quite busy, because that's when we start planting out. Last year, when I was head gardener, we'd get a trailer of plants out, and then I'd run around placing them, and Tom and Gareth would plant them, and then I'd be on to the next lot. So I just spent the months running around.
It's not a bad way to get in your steps, is it? But I love the way that you've detailed this back border, and the way that the movement picks up with trees in the landscape.
Yes, the landscape is fantastic out there, isn't it? It just makes the garden look like it goes on and on. So it's.
No, I'm going the planting. The way that you've planted.
Sorry.
No, not sorry. You're just being modest. You're being modest. That just doesn't happen.
I think that's luck.
It's not luck. It's not luck. Go. Those tender perennials don't just stop in that warm border. They're here in the white garden. You look at the shrubs and the herbaceous sort of set the rhythm and the structure. But then the tender perennials more or less guarantee you that colour through a long part of the season. We've got things like the Butylons. We've got Argyranthemums. And then the Nicotiana. And they just bounce their way through. I think it's really clever what they've done with the hedges, because they've not just used one block. They've left little windows so you get a link into the next space. And I think you can do that even in the smallest of gardens, maybe with an archway, a couple of pieces of trellis. You might just want to hide a seat or frame a pot at the end of the garden, but it just helps create a little bit of mystery. You might think I'm a little sad, but I've got to show you this. I learned about these at college and I haven't seen one for years. It's a shade house. So way back when, our big houses built them to store their collections of more unusual shade-loving plants. But I just love it as a building. The way that it plays with the light, it's a really nice space to be in. If you're half decent with a hammer and a saw, you can knock one up. In fact, I think I'm going to. And just when you think that there's no more space for tender perennials in this garden, Jackie and her team managed to squeeze a few more in. Look at this pot. Absolutely incredible, isn't it? They pop up all around the garden, and for me, they encapsulate what this garden is all about. Yes, there is a lot of work in those borders, but think about that on your terrace right the way through the summer months. Wouldn't that put a smile on your face? My mate was right about this garden. It is special, probably one of the best summer gardens I've ever seen, the design and the planting.
I think that's a garden I have to go and see. Mind you, we do use a lot of the same plants and techniques here in the Jewel Garden, using lots of tender annuals and also tender perennials like the cannas and the Ensete bananas. As long as you keep them protected from frost, they're really easy to grow. Put them in rich soil, you can mix them in the border and they're completely happy and trouble-free. This is the hornbeam that I planted in March last year, and it's done very well. Nellie, have you got a stick? Are you very, very pleased with that? Good girl, off you go. And there's a couple of things you can notice about it. The first is it's growing almost upwards. It's fastigiate, which means that's the way it naturally wants to grow. And I've also cleared the grass around the base. If you plant any tree for at least the first 3 years, you must have a generous area around the base that doesn't have grass or weeds in it, because they take up moisture and that will really affect the way the tree grows. However, there are some things you can plant around them, and that's what I'm going to add now. This is Cyclamen hederifolium. And it's an autumn flowering cyclamen, but they will start flowering from the end of August and go on flowering right through till October. And the leaves don't appear till after the flowers are fading. And they will grow in deep shade, they will grow in very dry conditions, they will grow in poor soil, so they're perfect for planting underneath tree or hedge. Cyclamen hederifolium grow from a tuber that looks a little bit like a squashed dried fig. And you should plant them with the tuber about 1 inch or so below the surface of the soil. Because they rise to the surface, or have a tendency to do that, if you see these large, flat tubers on the surface, then you should lift them and replant them 1 inch or so deeper. The next stage is to mulch that, because I don't want anything else. The last thing I want are weeds and grass growing in here. And I'm going to mulch it with leaf mold. Now, it doesn't matter too much if I go over the cyclamen a little, because they will grow through it. Now, cyclamen are not a flower that lend themselves to picking, to bring indoors into a vase. By and large, they look best in the ground, underneath a tree or a shrub or even a hedge. But Frances, as part of her tour of as many different kinds of allotment as possible, has gone to North London to visit an allotment with a distinctly floral theme.
Allotments are usually thought of as places to grow produce and the cultivation of delicious fruit and veg. But what if you could dedicate your whole allotment not to things to eat, but things that look beautiful and can be used in different ways? I've come to meet Helena Wilcox on her allotment in North London. But this is no ordinary plot, as she's devoted all of the space to growing cut flowers. Hi, Helena.
Hello.
This looks amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And it's all cut flowers.
Yep, all cut flowers.
That's incredible. And what made you want to do that on an allotment?
Well, I had an allotment originally where I grew all veg, and then when I started my floristry business, it just seemed to make sense to grow flowers instead.
And why is it so important for you to kind of grow your own rather than buying them in?
I just saw the huge amount of flowers that are being flown in from abroad. So I just thought it was an obvious thing to do. At least I can have some grown flowers that are grown here, and then I get the others locally.
Well, can you show me some of the things you're growing?
Yeah, sure. This is the dahlia bed. And then we've got poppies, which I've obviously let go to seed because the seed heads are so nice.
So you're using the seed heads rather than the flowers for
Yes,
your displays?
because the flowers, even though they're beautiful, they're a bit temperamental. They don't last very long.
No.
Got cornflowers, some lovely ammi. It just flowers all summer. You can sow it direct, and it just is so beautiful and makes all arrangements look really feathery and summery. And then this is the cosmos bed, which again is just a really easy flower to grow. Flowers all summer, and it gives you loads of joy, and it adds loads of texture to arrangements, which I really like.
Yes.
It sort of dances above everything, which is nice. It's just pretty.
Beautiful. Helena started on this plot back in January, and since then, it's bloomed into a world of colour. So what are your absolute kind of favourite must-have cut flower species?
So this is actually my favourite. It's chocolate cosmos, and
smell.
it smells like chocolate, which is always great. It also has this incredible, really deep colour when it first comes out, and then it goes more into this sort of paler red, which is obviously incredibly beautiful.
But how do you care for these? Because I've always found them a little bit overwhelming. They're not hardy, are they? So
No.
you can only grow them for 1 year. And do you grow them from seed or...?
So I buy them as the bare root, and
Right.
they often sell them in supermarkets, and they're really cheap, so you don't have to, spend a fortune on them. There's only 4 plants in here, and they really get big in one season, and you get so much harvest out of them, so it is worth it. And then in terms of looking after them, you do need to deadhead them quite a lot, like all the cosmos family.
Yeah.
And it's just about the soil, really, and that's why I did raised beds, so it was topsoil and compost and lots of manure, and they seem to be really happy.
Ooh,
Thank you. There you go.
nice shade. Helena grows her flowers in blocks and rows, which makes weeding a whole lot easier. But it also helps when it comes to harvesting.
So roses is something that I always try and get ones that have an amazing scent, because so many flowers don't smell anymore.
Yeah, because a rose without scent is always a little bit of a shame, isn't it, really?
Yeah, definitely.
So what's this one?
So this is Jude the Obscure.
Oh, that smells amazing.
Yeah, it does.
And does it keep its smell in a bouquet as well?
Yep, yeah, it would keep all the way through until it died, yeah. And I thought because you're here today, we could do some arranging.
You'll have a lot of work to do teaching me to do that, I think.
So you want the stem to be quite long. And then you want to put it straight into the water. People think it's nice to harvest them into a basket or something, but it's completely impractical. You want to get them into water immediately, because as soon as you cut a stem, just like
Yes.
if you cut your arm, it starts to close up. So you want to get it straight into water so it has a proper drink.
Is that the reason why you cut off the stems when you buy cut flowers from a shop?
Yeah, and sometimes when I give flowers to friends and they might not be in water or something, and they take them home and they just put them on the side, I'm like, ooh, it's so hard not to just be like, cut those and put it into water, because it really does keep the life of the flowers going for much longer. So now we're going to start the arrangements.
I'm genuinely nervous about this.
Just try to relax and enjoy it. There's no pressure.
Okay.
Usually with these arrangements, I suggest doing the foliage first because it's much easier to get a shape and a structure with your foliage before you start going with like huge flowers and stuff, and then it's hard.
So how tall would you make this?
Don't be scared to cut things quite short and put them in quite low, in quite far. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you can start going in with some bolder flowers like your dahlias or something if you'd like.
Let's go for an echinacea.
Yeah, so pretty.
There, your favourite chocolate cosmos, I think, are going to
Yes.
come into play.
I think I'm done.
I think I am just about done too. Although I could fiddle and fiddle.
Yeah. It looks so lovely, honestly, I'm not just
so
saying that.
does yours, look at that. But actually the thing that I'm really interested in is how much it informs your gardening. If you ever have a bed or something that you want to do and you're not sure the colour schemes, playing with floral arrangements would give you everything that you needed to inform your kind of plant choices. And very handily, it's my sister's birthday. So she is going to get this and
Yay.
hopefully thank me.
Oh, lucky her.
Thank you very much. It's been amazing.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
The idea of working out what to grow in a border from a bunch of flowers is a good one. And it works the other way. If you have a border where everything is looking good together and interacting well with colour and shape and texture, almost certainly, if you pick flowers from it, they will look equally good in a vase. Now, I'm going to sow some seeds now for next year that look great in a border and as cut flowers, and that is Ammi majus, and we also grow Ammi visnaga. Now, Ammi majus is like the most wonderful cow parsley that goes on flowering into August. Ammi visnaga, which is slightly shorter, has a domed head. It tends to be a little bit more durable and last longer. Now is the time to sow them, and it's easy enough. Just get some peat-free compost. This is our homemade compost with a little bit of leaf mould and vermiculite. Seed compost doesn't need to have a lot of goodness in it. What it does need is a nice open structure so the roots can form well. And then you prick them out or pot them on into something with a little bit more oomph. And when it comes to sowing the seed, what you need to do is sprinkle it thinly. I want each one to germinate and each one to be pricked out and to grow on into the garden. Now, the next thing to do is just press them down, not heavily, but just so there's good contact between the seed and the compost. And then you can cover them lightly with another layer of compost, or as I do, with a layer of vermiculite. And that does two things. One is to exclude light, and two is to hold them in place, because otherwise, with very small seeds like these, when you water them, you can displace them. You can literally just wash them to one side, and you find that all the seedlings will appear around the edge of the seed tray or down one end. So this is Ammi majus. It's one of those plants that has become dead trendy. 10 years ago, most people hadn't heard of Ammi majus, and it was not a common plant. I certainly didn't grow it here at Longmeadow. Now you can barely move without Ammi majus leaping out at you throughout the month of June and July, and that is a good thing because it is an absolute cracker. Now, I will water that and keep them moist and put them in the greenhouse. They will germinate in about 2 to 3 weeks. Let them grow on, and then they can be pricked out, and they will need storing from the worst of the frost over winter. Now, it's also a good time to sow some hardy annuals direct into the soil. Things like poppies that you can't really sow into seed trays because they hate being transplanted, or poached eggplants, Limanthes. And the best way to do that is to get a stick and draw a cross or a circle into the bare soil, and then sow the seed on those lines and cover them over. And the reason why you do a recognizable shape is so that when the seedlings germinate, you can see where they are in amongst any weeds or other seedlings that have got in there. Thin them lightly, let them grow on through winter, and then next year they will have a head start and flower earlier and longer. It's a really good thing to do. And here are some other good jobs to do this weekend. It's been a really good year for blueberries, but now the fruiting is coming to an end, it's time to give them a trim. Just clip them back to shape. Remove any damaged or crossing growth, and remember that what is left behind will produce next year's crop because they don't produce fruit on fresh growth. As soon as agapanthus have finished flowering, cut back the seed heads and remove the stems right down to the base. And then when you've done that, give them a feed of seaweed or a tomato feed and repeat this weekly until the beginning of October. At this time of year, it's more important to concentrate on ripening existing fruits than growing new ones. And to that end, remove any leaves that are obscuring fruit from the sun. And as well as helping them to ripen, this will improve ventilation, and that's the best defense against tomato blight. I am very, very pleased with this year's chicory, which we call radicchio, but radicchio actually covers all kinds of red chicory. This is Palo Rosso, and the end of August is really quite early to have radicchio ready. Normally it's more like October. And although it looks green on the outside, if I take the outer leaves off, you can see that in there is a beautiful red and white radicchio. I love the colour, I love the taste, that bitterness that adds depth and complexity to so many things. I'm happy. These are growing well. I don't mind the fact that it's raining, but I'm afraid it is the end of today's programme. I'm taking a week off next week, but I will leave you in the capable hands of Adam, who will be returning at the same time next Friday. And I'll be back in a couple of weeks' time when we return to the full hour-long programmes. So I'll see you in a fortnight's time here at Longmeadow. Till then, bye-bye.
Go on out. Ro mấy. Cái đậu